the water molecules are actually attracted to each side, all right? The positive end of water is attracted to the negative chlorine. So if enough of these guys team up, they can pull chlorine away from sodium. And the same thing can happen with sodium. The oxygen end of water is negatively charged because the electrons spend more time there. So they're actually going to be attracted to the sodium, and if enough water molecules team up there, they can pull sodium away from chlorine. So that's kind of how dissolving works, and here's a short video to kind of show you a little bit of it in action.
Sodium chloride crystals are held together by attractive forces between the positively charged sodium and negatively charged chloride ions. When a crystal of sodium chloride is placed into water, the hydrogen ends of polar water molecules attract the negatively charged chloride ions and gradually surround them. Likewise, the oxygen ends of water molecules are attracted to and surround the positively charged sodium ions.
So today we're going to look at how light behaves, and there was this light ray, he was in middle school, and he wasn't behaving very well. He was just, like refracting and diffusing and just all kinds of inappropriate things that light rays do. And so he was, sent to the principal's office, but the problem was that, actually it was a good thing for the light ray, but the principal's name was Mirror. So he just got reflected right back to the classroom, and he was okay. That was a good one. Anyway, these are the objectives we're going to learn today. Please make sure you look at them and refer back to them often. At the end of the video, it's a really good idea to look at them and see if you can answer them yourself. And if you can't, just watch that part of the video again so that you do understand them before you come to school. Now, if we're dividing fractions, one of these isn't really a fraction yet, so we need to make this s a fraction by putting it over 1. And then what you do when you divide fractions, if you haven't done this before, you flip and multiply by the reciprocal. And a reciprocal is just flipping the second one. All right, the reciprocal of s over 1 is just 1 over s. So we're going to take meters per second. We're going to multiply it by 1 over s. And that's how we do these dividing of fractions, just to remind you. And then multiplying this, we just multiply straight across what's on top. So m times 1 is just m, because anything times 1 is the same. And that's going to be over s times s. That's actually s squared. And that's our unit, meters per second squared. So make sure you always get the units right here too. It's in meters per second squared. -4 meters per second squared. Today we're talking about measuring things. And one thing that I thought was kind of funny is I read this article from CNN Tech, and it said that there was a $125 million satellite that was going to Mars. And because one engineering team used the wrong kind of units, they used English units instead of metric units, yeah, the whole thing crashed. So we're going to take 5 kilometers and we're going to go all the way down to the base. So count with me, 1, 2, 3. And since we went down the steps, we're going to move the decimal to the right. We're going from a big unit to a smaller one. So we're going down 3 places. We're going to move it to the right 3 places. Our answer ends up being 5,000 meters.
The first argument for universal health care is that it's provided for all people, regardless of whether you're employed or not. Everybody gets cared. There are a large number in the United States of people who don't have health care or who may lose it when they're in between jobs. So the argument for a universal system, everybody's covered. The other major advantage for it is that the argument is that expenses out of pocket go down. Now, people on the other side will argue, yes, but you're paying more in taxes. But nonetheless, fees for going to the doctor, fees then for those who are sick or who go to the doctor more often, those expenses go down. And last but not least, generally, people tend to argue that it's better for people in emergency situations because they can get care and it brings the cost down is the argument of emergencies. But everybody can go in an emergency and afford it because the government provides it. Okay, so one of the arguments against universal health care that we discussed before comes with higher taxes. And this is an argument that everybody in the country, in order to pay for everybody to have health care, needs to pay significantly more in taxes. And we'll talk about how much that is really when we get to Europe and some of the systems over there that provide health care as well. Take a look over at this cartoon. You can see a man who's waiting in his hospital bed for a procedure and the doctor saying, look, on the bright side, you're 1 spot closer. But you can see this long line of people already in line for that same procedure. If you take a look over here, and in the meantime, he's pushing over somebody who's died while waiting. But if you take a look on the left-hand side, you'll see a similar list of data that was collected on the wait times for common surgical procedures. So this is one of the biggest arguments that people point to against a universal system. The quality of care would go down, and the number of waiting lists would. Now I want to clarify really quickly between a couple terms that seem similar to each other. But a diversified economy is really the goal of many economies. They want to achieve this because it's a more stable economy. And so for our most developed countries or most developed economies, what we're usually looking at is a diversified economy. You can see here an example of it. There are multiple economic sectors. There are many different parts to it. Not one part makes up too much of the economy. And so as a result, if one area, let's say manufacturing, goes through a difficult time and begins to sort of decline, there are still plenty of other economic areas that can kind of replace that. And so it's a more stable economy because if one area suffers, the whole economy does not need to suffer as significantly. An economy that's based on really one or two resources is really going to hurt if demand for those resources declines.